Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar for the evening. Good way to get started. We're welcoming Barb Caswell, the program coordinator from the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, and she is joining us for the evening to talk about all the cost share opportunities that we have available here in Ontario and ways that you can take advantage of those. And just before we get started, just a few little updates that I always find issues when I'm on here on these webinars. If you're having trouble hearing me, I know it sounds basic, but check the volume on your computer. If not, try plugging in some headphones. That helps a lot of the times. Sometimes it's the simplest things that help out. Otherwise, in the little chat section, type some messages in there, and hopefully I'll be able to see there that if you're having any difficulties, just let me know. Just as we're moving along, just a few little information here. If you missed our last webinar, we had Sally Smith-Pelgore come on discussing the beef breeder cooperatives that we have here in Ontario. You can find that webinar along with any past webinars that we've had on our website at ontariobeef.com underneath the link for bfoUP webinars. You can find all of those and any past ones from last year. There's a lot of great information on those. You can look those up and find those there. If you're interested in attending any of our current county and district AGMs, some of them have already occurred currently, but there's still lots going on, and if you're interested in getting involved, you can find where those district AGMs might be on our Ontario Beef homepage, or you can contact myself or Dan Ferguson at our email address is there. If you've missed yours, you can also contact us, and we can give you the contacts to your local secretary or president, and they can provide you with information on when meetings might be, and that way you can get more locally involved and meet up with different producers within your area. We're also doing at our AGM this year a young producer development program. So if you're interested in coming to our annual general meeting in Toronto in February, Farm Credit Canada has agreed to sponsor some registrations and overnight accommodations for certain young producers between the ages of 19 to 40. So if you apply, our applications are online, and you can also contact me for more information. So it's just a chance to come and network and learn more about what the beef industry is about and what we're doing. And it's a great opportunity to find that information that you might have been looking for, just to see what exactly Beef Farmers of Ontario does, to meet different producers from across Ontario, and just to get a little bit more involved. So if you are interested in that, feel free to send me an email or give me a call in the office, and I'd be happy to give you more information about that program that we're doing. As well, we're going to do a networking session while we're there. So even if you're not coming with this program, but you're coming as a voting delegate, everyone who is between the ages of 19 and 40 is free to come and take part in that networking session that we're hosting. So we're really excited about having that at our annual general meeting this year. Also coming up this weekend is the Beef Symposium at the University of Guelph this Saturday. So that's part of the Farm Smart that's going on there. So there's a lot of great speakers that we have going on. We're getting an update on beef research in Ontario. So Dr. Katie Wood and Dr. Jess Gordon will be talking about the updates at the Allure Beef Research Station that's being built. So that'll be great, and there'll be a lot of other great speakers there. Some really interesting stuff that Dr. Robin White will be talking about will be all of the information that's coming out about the sustainability of a world without livestock, and how all of those fake meats that are coming out, that sort of thing. And so she'll be giving a discussion about that. If you are interested in that, you can register online by visiting farmsmartconference.com. There's a phone number there as well, or if you are in the area of Guelph or a student, you can just show up the day of and register. Obviously, there might be a bit of a line there, so it could be a bit of a pain in the butt if you just come the day of. So it would be a little bit better if you register online, but it is possible if you just wake up Saturday morning and decide you want to come, you can just show up and take part that day. But it is a lot of fun if you come out, and there's lots of great speakers, and I've gone for the past couple of years, and it's definitely worth your time going. Another great opportunity for young producers is the Cattlemen's Young Leaders Program. It's a program put on by the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. The application period is now open for the program. It's one that I have done in the past. So basically what it is you apply for it right now. There's the potential to go into, they call it the semi-finalists, which in and of itself is a great opportunity to go. You get to take part in the Canadian conference that they have, sorry, I was having a blank there, that they have in Calgary that they're having this year. And basically it's just a chance to networking and go around to different sessions. And if you get chosen to go through with it, there's training and mentoring and lots of opportunities for traveling. It's for producers between the ages of 18 and 35, and so you can find a lot more information there on cattlemensyoungleaders.com, or feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it and what I went through with it. So it's a good opportunity to take part in and take advantage of. Lastly, our next bfoUP Young webinar will be February 26th, featuring James and Joan McKinley of Silver Springs Farms. And they have a very unique way of succession planning on their own operation, and so they'll be giving a talk about that. And more information will be coming out after we wrap up this webinar that we're having here today. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my little presentation here, and we will move it on over to Barb. So I'm going to take myself off and move it on over to Barb. Computer, let me here. There we go, Barb. You should be able to good to go now.
Can you see my presentation okay?
I can. Yes, I can. I think I can also see your speaker notes there too, Barb.
You can. I wondered that. We'll just.
There we go.
Good now. Perfect. Okay. So we'll get this show on the road. First of all, Bethany, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in the webinar series. It was a really great opportunity. I will say that any Ontario Soil and Crop staff will jump at any opportunity that we are given to get information out to farmers as much as possible. I'm going to spend a bit of time tonight talking about more bang for your buck. So everybody's focused on that bottom line. So I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to spend the next hour with me, and hopefully you come out of this as seeing it as an efficient use of your time. I'm going to walk through some of the opportunities that are currently being delivered by the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association. Before I do that, I thought I would take a couple of minutes just to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got into this role and why I have any background at all to be talking about these cost share opportunities. So you'll see on the screen a picture of my daughter Josephine with her senior yearling Lady Empress getting ready to go into the ring at the regional 4-H show in Owen Sound. So this was Joey's first year into 4-H. I used to be a leader. I unfortunately had to bow out of it just due to time commitments, and I couldn't keep up with it. But we're still involved in 4-H. I'm a mom to 2. I do live in a very small community in Grey County. I make the long commute down to work every day in Guelph simply because I can't give up rural Grey Highlands. I don't have any aspirations to live in the city. I grew up in Grey Highlands, and I was quick to get back there when the opportunity arose. I completed my master's degree at the University of Guelph looking at genotype by environment interactions and crossbred beef cattle. There's a mouthful for you if you've ever had one. And after I completed that, I moved back home and spent a couple of years living on my great aunt and uncle's farm. Before coming to Ontario Soil and Crop, I worked in the sheep and poultry industries in a very similar capacity to what I'm doing now with Ontario Soil and Crop, where I worked very, very closely with farmers and also with many different funding partners. So at Ontario Soil and Crop, I'm a program coordinator, so I do work out of the Guelph office. I work on program delivery. So I'm involved helping develop programs based on priorities initiated by our funding partners and delivering those programs out to farmers. So Ontario Soil and Crop has really given me the opportunity to help farmers, which is a job that I know is worthwhile coming to work for every day. So who is Ontario Soil and Crop? So if some of you are new to farming or are maybe just new to getting into the farm in terms of your parents' farming or just new to cost share in general, I wanted to take a very quick few minutes and talk about who Ontario Soil and Crop is. Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association is a unique nonprofit organization that represents all commodity groups across the province. So we have members who are beef farmers. Actually, I'll take a moment to point out that Joan McKinley is actually one of our past presidents. Absolutely amazing lady. I encourage, if you have the opportunity to participate on the next webinar, she is great to listen to. But yeah, we do have members across all commodity groups. We're always looking for new members if you're interested. One of the things about Ontario Soil and Crop is that we're not like other commodity groups in that we are not a lobbyist organization. We don't directly lobby provincial or federal governments for change. What that allows us to do is it puts us in a unique position where we are able to be contracted by governments to deliver various opportunities to Ontario producers. This includes both cost share and educational opportunities, some of which I'm going to touch on in this evening's presentation. So what is cost share? If you're new to the concept of cost share, I wanted to take a very few quick minutes and talk about what exactly cost share is. We hear the word a lot, but I'm not sure everybody exactly understands what cost share is. So before I start with that, I'm going to tell you about what cost share is not. So cost share is not free money. It is not a subsidy, a tax rebate, or an insurance policy. What cost share funding is an investment, and it's also taxable income. If you receive a cost share payment, you do have to report that as taxable income to the farm. The way cost share works is that you apply to undertake a project. The application is reviewed, and if approved, you complete the project and submit your receipts and proof of payment for a reimbursement based on a set percentage of the cost. A couple important things to note. Most cost share programs that are being delivered today require that you apply, get your approval before you start your project. This is a very important point that I'm going to make. You'll see it with pretty much all of the cost share programs that are delivered by Ontario Soil and Crop. You have to get approval before you move ahead. If you're able to move ahead regardless of the cost share program, the expectation is that you would undertake the project without cost share. So get approval and undertake your project. If you don't meet this requirement and you receive an approval for a project and you go to claim that project, you might end up losing part of your cost share. So very, very important. The other thing I'm going to note is that cost share programs do not always align with production schedules or farm business plans. This means there may be activities that you want to undertake that are just simply not eligible to receive cost share under the programs that Ontario Soil and Crop delivers. As I mentioned before, and will reiterate, it's not free money. You need to invest time in order to be successful. For those that are willing to put in the legwork and the planning time, you can be very successful accessing cost share dollars. For those that are not willing to do so, there's a really, really high probability that you will not be successful accessing cost share. So we're going to jump right into cost share opportunities that are currently available from the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association. And you might have heard some of these buzzwords floating out and about in the community. So the Canadian Agricultural Partnership is a 5-year agreement between federal, provincial, and territorial governments The program launched in April of 2018 and will run until March of 2023. So it is a 5-year program. It is the predecessor to the Growing Forward 2 program. So if you've heard Growing Forward 2 program, that program has long wrapped up, and the Canadian Agricultural Partnership is the next one down the road. Also falling underneath the partnership umbrella, but with its own set of requirements, is the LEADS program. LEADS stands for Lake Erie Demonstrating Sustainability. This program also launched in April of last year and just closed its intake in December for the current program year. So we're going to talk about both of these programs, a little bit about what's required, a little bit about what's eligible under each. I'm barely going to scratch the surface, but at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you some really great resources if you have some questions to follow up. So with cost share opportunities, as I mentioned before, it's always possible that cost share opportunities don't always align with your farm planning priorities. What is absolutely vital to the process is that you assess, plan, and implement. So as I mentioned before, cost share is not a subsidy or an insurance policy. It's about helping farmers to be competitive and sustainable in today's market. It's about being progressive, assessing your operation, identifying gaps and areas for improvement, and carrying out those actions. It's not enough just to state, my business needs this. There needs to be more accountability for public dollars, keeping in mind that it's far often the needs outweigh the available funds. So there needs to be a way of deciding who gets funding. This is where we have seen a move to merit-based programs, and you'll hear me talk about merit-based and merit evaluation criteria as I move through some of the requirements of the program. You need to demonstrate how your particular project aligns with the priorities and criteria outlined for the program. As I mentioned before, no one will question if you're undertaking a project and willing to make an investment that that project is a good fit for your business. It's not enough in order to access cost share. You need to take that one step farther, and this is where this concept of assess, plan, and implement comes in. This is key to the merit approach. So jumping in more specifically to the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, so you'll commonly hear the partnership, the program referred to as the partnership. As I mentioned, it is a 5-year program that spans across 4 different streams. So Ontario Soil and Crop is responsible for delivering the program to producers, to farmers such as yourself. There is also a stream for processors, a stream for organizations and collaborations. This would be, for example, where Beef Farmers of Ontario would apply for opportunities. And there's also an other agribusiness stream. The other agribusiness stream is, for example, for vets, auction marts, custom manure applicators. It tries to catch some of those agribusinesses that aren't incorporated under the other 2 streams of producer and processor. As I mentioned before, Ontario Soil and Crop delivers the stream for producers. We also deliver a stream for other plant health, which is where your custom applicators and those kinds of businesses come in. So first and foremost, before you delve too far into the funding program, you need to know right out of the gate if you're an eligible applicant. So there's a couple of key things that you need to hone in on. First of all, you need to produce agricultural commodities and file farm business taxes in Ontario. So you have to be an Ontario farmer. You have to have a valid and up-to-date premise identification number. Premise identification numbers are given out by the Provincial Premise Registry. They're quick and easy to get. You need your tax assessment roll number. You give the number a call for the Provincial Premise Registry. They take the information, and usually in 24 to 48 hours, they can give you your premise ID. If you think you have a premise ID and you're not sure, or you're not sure if that premise identification number is valid, we strongly encourage you to contact the Provincial Premise Registry. Those numbers do get validated, so if you find out your number isn't valid, it could be something that holds up an application. Last but not least, you need to have a valid farm business registration number. There are some exceptions available to the farm business registration number, such as a cultural or religious exemption. If you have questions about those, feel free to give us a call. There's also an exemption for new producers. So these would be new entrants to the agricultural industry, those that don't yet have a farm business registration number because they haven't generated sufficient income to apply for one. If you think you are a new producer or may qualify as a new producer, we encourage you to give us a call. There is a specific application that has to be filled out, and if you're a new producer, you are only eligible for specific categories under the program. So we can walk you through some of those specifics easier on the phone than trying to explain them through email or a presentation or additional paper documentation. So the program is broken out into 3 key priority areas. The key priority areas of the program are economic development. So economic development in the agri-food and agri-product sector, environmental stewardship to enhance water quality and soil health, as well as protection and assurance to reinforce the foundation for public trust in the sector through improved assurance systems in food safety and plant and animal health. So I'm going to go through each of these sections. I'm only going to scratch the surface. So I'm going to give some examples of the types of projects that are eligible under each of the category. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specific requirements within each of the categories. But I'm going to keep saying it, I'm only going to scratch the surface. There is over 50 different project categories that are available through the program. So I'm touching on a few. Hopefully I pique a bit of interest out there and encourage you to follow up and see the full suite of opportunities that's available under this particular program. So we're going to start with economic development. With any of the categories under economic development, you are required to complete a Growing Your Farm Profits workshop. So I'm going to talk about workshops a little bit at the end. If you're new to them, I'll give you a bit of an overview, but the Growing Your Farm Profits workshop is one of the workshops that need to be renewed every 5 years. So if you think you have one, but you're not sure, it's always a really great opportunity to get into the workshop, renew your action plans, and take a second look. Economic development is focused on business analysis, market development, and productivity. So, as an example, working with an advisor to develop a business plan that plans for and provides capacity to manage business growth and make strategic decisions would be an eligible project. So if you want to complete a business plan, here's an opportunity. In the past, the program has funded succession planning. That's one of the things that wasn't carried forward through into the partnership. So unfortunately, we no longer fund succession planning, but business planning is still funded, as well as financial analysis. Purchase of new and novel equipment in support of improvements in labor productivity. This is a very popular category. So the picture here, I tried to find one that was specific to beef production. There's a lot of projects that I didn't find one filtering through, but I know there's some in there. But just as an example, the item pictured in this slide is a automated grape harvester equipped with optical sort technology. So a couple of the interesting aspects of this category is that the machinery you're applying for has to be new or novel. And when we say new or novel, we mean it has to be used in less than 20% of the industry in Ontario to date. So you have to provide something with your application to show it's not common technology. Keeping in mind, the program is focused on helping producers be competitive and sustainable. It must enhance labor productivity and efficiencies. So lots of equipment out there that's really great in terms of improving production levels. This is specific to labor productivity. This slide is implementation of a marketing plan to expand domestic market access. So if you want funding to help you put together a marketing plan using third-party services, this is an opportunity. The couple pictured in the photo are Great Lakes Goat Dairy. They actually did a fairly substantial marketing plan, which got funded through the program. And if you have a chance, check out Great Lakes Dairy. They've actually created an online ordering system where you can order goat cheese through the internet. So that's kind of exciting. So that's economic development in a nutshell, and we're going to move on to environmental stewardship. So environmental stewardship programming funds are targeted to farm businesses working towards improving soil health and water quality. Important point to note, you need an environmental farm plan. Just like the Growing Your Farm Profits workshop, it is a 2-day workshop, it is free, but it is required to be updated every 5 years. So you should have a 4th edition environmental farm plan. If you don't have a 4th edition environmental farm plan, it's likely you need to get it updated. You don't have one at all, it's an excellent opportunity, and I encourage you to check it out. We're going to touch on a couple of the opportunities that are available specifically under environmental stewardship. So planting permanent windbreaks or vegetated wind strips to control wind erosion. Shifting to no-till or strip-till equipment to reduce soil erosion and increase soil health. Planting cover crops. This particular category is eligible for producers who have not left cover crops undisturbed through the winter more than 3 times for the past 5 years. So we're encouraging producers who have not yet tried cover crops to jump on board and capitalize on their benefits. Eligible cost is everything from cost of the seed for cover crops to cost of planting costs incurred by the producer. So this could be the producer's own time, or it could be to pay someone to come in and plant a cover crop for them. Manure storage improvements is eligible under this particular program. A couple of important things to note: that the funding is to support producers who currently do not have 240 days of storage for their current livestock numbers. If you are building a new facility, or if you are looking to increase your livestock numbers, you wouldn't be eligible under this particular category. So it's only for folks who don't have 240 days of storage and simply need to bring their storage up to that capacity. Another area is roofing over outdoor livestock areas to address runoff control. So it is eligible assuming it's a current outdoor livestock area. So unfortunately, we won't fund to build new livestock areas, but if you have a current one, there is funding available to put a roof over that area, as well as to cement the base to prevent runoff of manure into waterways. So again, just scratching the surface, a couple of categories under environmental stewardship. Next one we're going to jump to is protection and assurance. We see a fairly significant uptake in many of these categories for beef producers, so hopefully there's a couple in here that pique your interest. Protection and assurance initiatives provide support to farm businesses to keep pace with changing assurance systems, rapidly evolving risks, changing marketplace expectations, and increasing consumer demand for greater transparency while remaining competitive. Very important point to note with many of these categories is that you are required to provide an assessment. That assessment is typically against the national codes of practice for the care and handling of livestock, or against the national biosecurity requirements. If you are not familiar with either of those pieces, you can talk to your vet, you can contact someone at Beef Farmers of Ontario, or you can give us a call with Ontario Soil and Crop, and we can gear you towards those specific areas. So protection and assurance is further separated out into 3 subcategories. The first category is animal health. Animal health is focused on helping, as I said before, farmers meet national codes of practice or biosecurity standards. You are going to have an assessment against one of those in order to apply to these categories. If you are looking at an assessment against the national biosecurity standards, you will have to take a biosecurity workshop. Biosecurity workshops are an amazing opportunity. Biosecurity workshops tend to run about 3 to 4 hours. They are facilitated by Ontario Soil and Crop, but they're actually, the technical content is delivered by a veterinarian. So I always tell producers it's a great opportunity to sit in a room for 3 to 4 hours with a veterinarian, ask them your animal health questions at no cost. It's a free workshop. So check out a biosecurity workshop. It's also an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the national biosecurity standards. So a couple of the eligible projects that fall under this particular section of the program. Constructing mortality composters for dead stock management. So you can establish on-site facilities for the management of dead stock. You can see here in the picture a dead stock composting system. A couple of things to note with some of the categories, and again, you need to do the legwork, you need to do the reading, you need to check the program guide. There are preferences in some of the categories identified. In this particular category, there is a preference identified to farmers who are in Northern Ontario, as well as farmers who are undertaking projects to support the disposal of sheep or goats. I want to be very, very clear that that does not mean other types of producers cannot apply to this program. Beef producers can apply to this particular category, dairy producers, poultry producers. There is a priority given to sheep and goats, but that priority comes into play if we have really, really high uptake in an intake and we simply don't have enough funds to fund all of the really great projects that come in. So if this is something that interests you, I encourage you not to be deterred by preferences that are listed in the guide. They may or may not come into play depending on uptake on the particular category. Another very popular category is installing humane handling equipment to reduce threats to animal welfare. So some really great systems out there. You can get cost share to purchase one of those systems. This might be an opportunity where instead of going the route of the biosecurity workshop and national biosecurity standards, you'd probably provide an assessment against the national codes of practice, suggesting that an improved handling system will provide better welfare for your animals. In terms of those assessments, they do not have to be completed by a vet, but being a merit-based program, one of the ways that we award merit is if you do work with your vet to complete that assessment. In talking about some of the project categories, if you have your vet out to the farm to help you with an assessment, there is cost share available for you to do that, keeping in mind you'd have to apply, get approval, do the assessment, and then use that assessment for future applications. Some producers want to get right to the hardcore implementation of projects. They don't want to wait for the approval of an assessment. If you're going to pay that vet to come out on the farm and work with you to do an assessment, have them assess your farm against the national biosecurity standards and the national codes of practice. Kill two birds with one stone, create a broad idea of what types of projects you undertake, and that's an opportunity you could use that same exact assessment for multiple projects because you might have identified multiple gaps as part of the assessment process. So optimize the money you're spending to get the best bang for your buck back. Another category is traceability equipment. So the program will fund RFID readers, scales, and taggers. Jumping on to the next subgrouping under protection and assurance is food safety. I threw a slide in here just to make sure you're all aware that it exists. The food safety categories are specific to horticulture producers. So if you're growing fruits and vegetables at home on the farm, this might be an area that you were looking for. If you are solely focused on your beef production, you're not going to be eligible under these categories. So we're just going to skip right over them and jump on to the next section. The next subcategory under protection and assurance is plant health, which is focused on proactively managing Ontario's plant agricultural resource base through the implementation of positive actions by the supply chain. Again, keeping in mind protection and assurance, we're still focused on helping farmers meet national standards. So if you were looking at an opportunity under plant health, we do have a crop biosecurity workshop that introduces you to the national biosecurity standards for crop production. So you would have to partake in that workshop and do an assessment against those particular standards. With the crop workshop, as I mentioned before, it is facilitated by Ontario Soil and Crop, but the technical content is delivered by a certified crop advisor. So again, a couple hours in the room with a technical expert, ask them whatever questions you might have on plant disease and pest pest risk. A couple of the categories that we see under this particular grouping: using new technologies to modify environmental conditions or farming practices to reduce pest development and spread, and modifications to an existing sprayer system to install a continuous rinse system. So I've covered a number of categories. As I said, I've merely scratched the surface with just a few there in each of the categories. I'm going to touch on resources a little bit later and where you find a complete list of everything that's available. The last one I'm going to touch on, all of the categories I've talked about to date are not open and accepting intakes at this moment. We'll talk about that in a little bit. One category that is accepting applications at this current time is a targeted intake that was launched to support dawn testing for Ontario farmers. So this particular category provides cost share funding for farmers to undertake testing after they have identified 5 parts per million or greater in their corn crop. So if they have a test showing the 5 parts per million, they can apply for funding for additional testing. They can apply for funding to purchase test kits for dawn, or they can apply for funding to purchase equipment that will support dawn testing. So keep in mind it is very specific to dawn testing in corn. But if you're in this particular situation, you might want to visit our online resources and have a look at that opportunity, which is currently accepting applications. So how applications are assessed. So applications are only accepted during intake periods. So as I mentioned before, right now none of the categories are open. There isn't an intake open except for that plant health targeted intake. You are able to submit up to 2 applications for consideration. So regardless of the category, you can submit 2 applications for consideration. If a decision is made on those applications, you can submit 2 more in the next intake. There is no cap on the number of applications that a producer can have approved or complete through the cost share at any given time. So talk about an investment. So more bang for your buck. Where else can you find the opportunity to invest some time and get a return of 35% or greater on every dollar that you invest? But you have to invest the time. So you got to do the legwork, you got to do the reading. Lots of opportunity, lots of projects. Some may be very simple and small projects, others may be very large. Each category is different in terms of what the cost share level is. And what the cap amount is. So there is a cap for each category where the cost share essentially caps out and you don't go over even with greater investment. All applications are evaluated only after the intake close. So with the merit-based program, we allow everything to come in and it's assessed as an intake. So with the partnership program, your application is assessed against other applications that are received in a particular category. This is what I referred to before in that priorities may or may not come into play depending on the level of demand for a particular category. If demand is really low, then there's lots of opportunity to access those funds. If demand is really high, it becomes a much more competitive process. Unfortunately, when demand goes up, the dollars don't always proportionately go up to match them. So again, limited funds that we have to spread across many great projects. Only projects that best meet the merit assessment criteria are approved for cost share funding allocation. All of this information is available to you. So you need to read it. You need to make the call if you feel your application meets that merit assessment criteria and whether or not it's worth the investment of your time to complete that application process. Takes on average 45 business days to review applications. Sometimes it can take longer, sometimes it takes less. But notification is sent by email once a decision is made on the project. If you submit an application to one of our cost share programs, there's a couple of different outcomes that are possible. You could be approved, partially approved, conditionally approved, or declined. And there's a couple of different scenarios under which you may find that you're declined. With partially approved, if you submit a project and we review the application and it meets all the merit evaluation criteria, but you've thrown in a cost there that's not eligible, we don't decline the whole application. We simply remove the cost and let you know that that particular cost wasn't eligible for cost share. So you receive a partial approval. One of the common ones we see a lot is folks that put permits. You have to get a permit in order to do your project. Unfortunately, the cost of the permit isn't an eligible cost. But we wouldn't decline the project simply based on you including that permit cost. So why are applications declined? So this is really important because the last thing we want is for a producer to invest time into completing the application and not seeing any return on their investment. So we want to make sure producers understand the reasons under which an application could be declined for funding. An application could be declined because it was incomplete. This is information directly out of the program guide. So broken record, but I'm going to say it again, you got to read the material. If you invest the time, greater probability you're going to be successful. So you've got to read the material. In the material, we tell you what's required documentation. What do you have to submit with your application? We list it all out. If you're not sure what something in there is, pick up the phone and give an OSCIA staff person a call. We can walk you through anything that's in there if you're confused about exactly what we're looking for. So here's just an example out of the guide. To be honest, I can't even tell you what category I pulled this from, but you can see that required documentation, a certificate of completion for a Growing Your Farm Profits workshop, and a copy of your action plan. You have to submit that documentation. If your application comes in without it, we'll do our best to follow up, but we want to limit staff resources to put more dollars out the door to cost share opportunities, so we don't always necessarily have enough staff resources to follow up if there's a lot of incomplete applications. So don't run the risk of getting declined incomplete. Make sure you know what that required documentation is. Next, a project was not eligible. Again, if we look to the information provided in the program guide, we've done our best to outline what's eligible in terms of costs and what's not eligible in terms of costs. If you have a question, pick up the phone, but make sure you read this and make sure you're confident that your particular application fits under those activities and expenditures. If it doesn't clearly align with something that's in the eligible section, it's always best to double check with us just to make sure it fits. We do tend to stick fairly closely to the eligible activities and expenditures, keeping in mind the ineligible list is not a complete list. So make sure it fits in the eligible. If it doesn't, just double check with us. The last way in which an application might be declined is if it did not best meet the merit evaluation criteria. Some of this, as I mentioned before, is related to demand in a particular intake. If we get 5 applications, great. If we get 100 applications to a single category, it's a lot more competitive. However, there are times when if you're really not meeting those criteria at all, it doesn't matter if we don't have any other applications. If you're really not meeting the criteria very well, it's likely you won't receive a cost share allocation. So the merit assessment criteria are also detailed in the program materials. So be sure to check the guide and judge for yourself if you think your project aligns with those merit assessment criteria. So, as I mentioned before, the program launched in April of 2018, so we are just wrapping up the first year of the program. It'll close in March. We're basically just working on folks that are claiming out approved applications. We did have 2 intakes in the first year of the program, one in April, one in August, with over 1,300 applications submitted. 800 projects were approved. An important point to note, out of eligible applications, we approved 80% of the applications that came in. There was over $12 million in cost share allocated to projects in the first year. So bang for your buck, get your homework done, get your piece of the pie for year 2. Where were our successful applicants? Well, here's just a quick breakdown of animal production versus crop production across the three main areas of focus: economic development, environmental stewardship, protection and assurance. It's a little bit higher for crop production and economic development and environmental stewardship, but protection and assurance is definitely popular amongst livestock producers. So if you're a little bit short on time, you want to figure out where guys are going, this gives you a little bit of insight into where other livestock producers might be focusing on within the program for opportunities. Year 2 of the program. This is where, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good news. Applications for the second year of the program, intake dates, have not yet been announced. They are coming, I assure you. The program is not going by the wayside. It will continue to run for the next 4 years. So we do anticipate those dates to be released very soon. But unfortunately, I don't have dates for you this evening, and just encourage folks to contact us or get in a workshop or watch our website for the launch of those next intake dates. Last point here, not all project categories are available in every intake. So there is potential that not all of the categories will be available, just depending on the timing of the intake, when we expect approvals to go out. For example, sending out approvals for a project that couldn't be completed in the winter months. So that's just something to consider when you're looking at opportunities. I mentioned the Lake Erie Agricultural Demonstrating Sustainability Program. This program does fall under the partnership umbrella. It covers some very similar categories that you would find under the environmental stewardship grouping. So have a look at both. A couple of things to note with the LEADS program. It is geared to a very specific geography in Ontario. So you can see with this map, you have to be located in the green area in order to be eligible for the program. It is a merit-based program, but it runs with a continuous intake. So when the program opens, it continues to accept applications and send out approvals until the budget is allocated for that particular program year. The merit comes into play with the LEADS program through the Farmland Health Checkup. The Farmland Health Checkup is a free opportunity for producers in the green area on the map to sit down with a certified crop advisor and assess soil health of particular fields on their farm. Great opportunity if you're interested. It opens you up to cost share within the LEADS program. Depending on the priorities identified through your Farmland Health Checkup, that identifies the merit. It also ties directly to the level of cost share that you're eligible for. So if you find there's a particular category under LEADS that you're interested in, you might want to explore that category under the partnership as well as under LEADS and figure out what option is best suited to your particular farm operation. So I mentioned the Farmland Health Checkup. Free opportunity to sit down with a certified crop advisor. If you're interested, certainly let us know. LEADS launched in April of 2018. For the first year of the program, they had 193 applications approved. The max funding you can get for any particular project is $20,000, and the program allocated over $2 million. So again, get your piece of the pie and invest your dollars. I talked about workshop opportunities. I'm not going to spend too much time on them tonight. I did mention the 3 that Ontario Soil and Crop delivers. There's the Environmental Farm Plan, the Biosecurity Workshop, and the Growing Your Farm Profits. All of these workshops are a great opportunity. They offer so much more than providing the eligibility simply to access cost share programs. However, that is one of the carrots that is out there for folks to get into the programs. There are some opportunities if you have done one of the workshops that need to be renewed, which is Environmental Farm Plan or Growing Your Farm Profits. There is opportunity if you've done those workshops before to complete them as an online component. That's something to consider. If you're interested in workshops or anything else I've talked about this evening, your best bet is online resources. So I'm going to take the last few minutes very quickly to talk about where you'll find more information and additional information about all of the things that I've talked to you about tonight. This is the Ontario Soil and Crop website, so it's www.ontariosoilcrop.org. When you come to our homepage, you will see menus across the top, including the programs menu. When you click on programs, you'll see all of the opportunities that Ontario Soil and Crop offers. So you can see here Canadian Agricultural Partnership. You click on that, you can see that you can have the regular intake as well as the Lake Erie program or the Farmland Health Checkup. There's also workshops and webinars here if you're interested in reading more about those workshops or looking for an opportunity to identify a workshop in your area and register. There's a couple of different programs here that are also listed that I haven't mentioned this evening. And the reason I haven't mentioned them is that they are closed. They're no longer accepting applications. The Species at Risk Farm Incentive Program, I'm going to draw your attention to that one just because it tends to be a very popular program for beef producers. It has in the past offered opportunities to set up remote livestock watering systems, to fence livestock out of wooded areas or waterways, or funding to set up rotational grazing pastures. As I mentioned, it is fully allocated and closed for the 2018 program year. It's a little bit unique in that we work with some different funding partners on that particular program, and we do have to apply for the funding every year. So we're in that process right now. If the funding becomes available, it'll typically be announced usually around May or June. So check back to our website if I tweaked your interest on a couple of those. You can go and read the information that was available for the 2018 program just to get an idea of what's been available in the past. We'll move on here. If you go to the Canadian Agricultural Partnership page on our website, you're going to find a couple of things. You're going to find a link to the program guide for the partnership. So everything I've talked about in terms of project categories, eligibility information, levels of cost share, all of that information can be found on the program guide. You have to read the guide. Don't read the guide, you run the risk of investing time in completing an application with no payout on the end. If you click on that link for the program guide, it's going to take you to our online program guide. The online program guide functions for all of the streams that I talked about earlier on in the program. So producer, processor, and other business. So if you're interested in just having a look at some of the other opportunities, you can certainly check those out. A couple of different ways that you can navigate the site. There's a search bar here at the top. You can enter a search term. You can enter manure. You can enter livestock handling. Enter a search term, click search, it'll bring up all the opportunities that refer to that particular term that you've entered. You can also just filter the opportunities based on the stream that you are. So if you were to go to the website and click on producer, it's going to filter out all of those other categories that are not open to producers and give you the complete list of everything that's eligible for a producer. Again, it's about 50 different project categories. So you can see here, everything other than that plant health targeted intake is currently closed. We're really hopeful we'll have those intake dates by the end of the month, but check back. If and when an intake opens up, you will see information in terms of open. I can also click on this closed, and it will take me to information specific to that category. Or I can further sort down. So here is an example of clicking on a particular category. This is equipment to improve animal handling. This is where you're going to find everything you need to know to apply to the program. So right off the bat, you can look at the title of the category. You can look at who should apply. So equipment to improve animal handling supports sheep, goat, veal, beef cattle, hint, hint, farm cervids, fox, rabbit, and mink. So That's not to say that other commodities can apply, but preference is given to these particular commodity groups. To apply, you must have. So you have to have a biosecurity workshop or an assessment against national biosecurity standards, or an assessment against national codes of practice. So you have to have those before you send in your application. Even though we don't have intake dates open right yet, it's a good time to get these things in line and know what you're looking to. Then we talked earlier about eligible activities and expenditures, making sure your project aligns within those. If you go a little bit further down the page, you're going to find this document here. This is where you're going to find information about, if I want to work on my own project, can I get paid for it? You're going to find detail. I mentioned before that it is taxable income. You're going to find information on what an eligible cost is. So, for example, you have to have arm's length transactions. You have to use businesses that aren't associated with your own business through a family relative. You're also going to find an apply online and a link to a downloadable application when the intake is open. So this information, you won't find it on the site at the moment, but when an intake is released, those links to apply online or download a paper copy of the application will become available. If you choose to apply online, this is the system that we use. It's called ontarioprograms.net. If you use this system for Growing Forward 2, it's the exact same account. You use the same email address and the same password. So if you're new, you're going to come in as a new client. If you're existing, you're going to put in your email address. If you know you have an account but you forgot your password, there are steps and a link you can take to update your password. When you complete an application, you will get this screen. And there's a reason I put this up, because we have a lot of folks that go through the application process and don't, for whatever reason, get to submit. So make sure that if you're submitting online, that you end the process with the screen that tells you your application has been successfully submitted, and it gives you an application number. And that would be the number, if you called us here in the office and we're looking for information, we'd be looking for that application number. So this is a tremendous amount of information. I certainly realize that. I talked about some of the online resources that are available. As I mentioned when I started my presentation, I work out of the Guelph office, so I'm always happy to answer questions for you. But we do have regional program leads and workshop leaders across the province. They're in Northern Ontario, they're in Southwestern Ontario, they're in Eastern Ontario. They fall all across the province. You can access them through the Contact Us link on our website. They are an amazing resource. They are closer to your area, so they might understand a little bit more about your geography. And if you have program questions, I encourage you to contact them. One of the benefits of getting into a workshop in your area is you will get the opportunity to meet the field staff representative in your area, make that contact, and capitalize on that resource when you're looking for cost share opportunities. We also are here at the Guelph office. I've put the email address up there. If you're not sure how to locate your workshop leader, give us a call or an email and we can help you out with that. So right within the hour timeline, I appreciate everyone paying attention to all of that information. I really hope it wasn't an information overload. Everything can be found on the websites that I provided, which are linked off of Ontario Soil and Crops website. And I guess at this point, I would just open it up if there are any questions.
Awesome, that's great, Barb. I'm just gonna bring myself back on here, and you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
Awesome.
Yep.
Perfect. So I'm just going to ask one or two questions just to give, if anybody is typing a question, it'll give them a little bit of time. If they're looking for a workshop or anything like that, and they go on the website and they can't find one that's nearby or anything like that, would they just reach out to their regional person there and see if they could find one that's nearby, or would they need to set up one in their area, or how would they go about doing that if they don't notice one in their area?
Yeah, so one of the things with workshops is we do have to have sort of that minimum number of participants to be able to offer the workshop. We tend to be a little bit more lax with those requirements when we're close to an intake, because we know guys need those workshops to get into the intake. But I always tell folks, if you have a look and there's nothing in your area, get a hold of your workshop leader. Sometimes they've talked at various shows and whatnot, and they just don't think the demand is there. But if they start receiving a couple of calls, it's usually a suggestion that demand does exist, and they'll get something up if they think they can get the numbers. So first step is definitely to contact a workshop leader. As I mentioned before, there are a couple of online opportunities for workshops. They're a bit of a different format, so you're not sort of walked through the process. They can be a little bit confusing, so we tend to recommend those opportunities more for folks if you have the workshop, but it's not done within the last 5 years. It's a really great opportunity because you have that background to renew that workshop and not have to get out to that in-person session, particularly if you're struggling to find one in your area.
Okay. Just for like the preferences for those sorts of situations, what kind of determines how they go about making those preferences when they're evaluating as they're getting those intakes in?
That would have to be a question. The preferences are given to us as a requirement through our funding partners. So they're not something that are decided upon or identified by Ontario Soil and Crop. I would suggest a number of factors probably go into determining them. And because I'm not directly involved, I'm just somewhat speculating, but it's potentially influenced by previous level of uptake, by current requirements for a particular industry, current state of the industry, particularly with a specific undertaking, or the state of the industry in terms of adopting things like national codes of practice, those kinds of things. So we have been told, and there is information in the guidebook that suggests those priorities could potentially change over the life of the program. But that's probably the best answer I can give.
Well, yeah, it was mostly just more of a curiosity question on my end, just asking. I haven't seen any other questions come in. I think you did a pretty good presentation there, answering most of what other questions are. And I think if anybody does have any questions, feel free to contact Barb, or you can also reach out to the BFO office, and Dan Ferguson is really good at answering questions along those lines as well. Also, as soon as any information comes out about if the intake is open for the upcoming CAP, as soon as Barb hands it out, we'll have it up on our information too, on the BFO website, as well as in our weekly newsletters, that sort of thing, as well as on here. So definitely keep your eyes open, everybody, because we'll be making sure that that news comes out as well as soon as it's good to go, so that everybody's able to get on there if they're interested. But otherwise, Barb, thanks so much for taking the time out this evening, and definitely appreciate you putting together this presentation and doing a really good job and making sure everybody's getting the information they need to make sure they can get the bang for their buck and really know how to go about doing it. So definitely appreciate it, and we will see you soon, I guess. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Have a good night.
You too.